day today. Beautiful sunset tonight. Our guest is Sara Schoeffler, the president of Trees Acadiana, and want to share the history, how it all got started, and how long it's been operating, and the accomplishments in the past years that they've been operating in the Lafayette area and far beyond Lafayette to a lot of other communities. And where are we going from that for moving forward? What are the plans for Trees Acadiana to keep Lafayette area, Acadiana area in beautiful trees? Native trees, I would say, probably.
They are. All of them are native. That's what we plant.
So
And
how did
that's-
Trees Acadiana get started? Who started? Pierce Melton, I guess, was one of the names that comes up.
It was Pierce Melton and Vic Bell, and I can remember sitting on stools in Vic Bell's little condominium, deciding how we were going to start all of this. And it was about 1996, close to 1997. Mark Miller, Pierce Melton, that was his baby to do this. And we had a wonderful beginning. Mark Miller was our first president, and he planted, his first planting was out at the corners of University and Pinhook. It's that kind of little knoll area up there, full of trees.
Across from the Protestant graveyard.
Across from the Protestant cemetery, yes. And
Beautiful trees today.
they're gorgeous. And since that time, in 1997, we have had 23 Arbor Days. And so that means we have planted 23 major plantings in this community. Not to begin to talk about all the Eagle Scout projects we've done with your
Buying the
Eagle
trees
Scouts.
and volunteer help.
Volunteers helping. So we've planted a lot of trees, and then we've given thousands and thousands of trees away. We get seedlings every year. Those that aren't given away right away, we end up potting up, and they start growing, rooting into pots, and get to be nice trees. And we give them out at all of our festivals, all of our Arbor Days, anywhere that we can get a chance to give a tree, we get there to give it. And they are kept at the Bayou Vermilion District's Bayou Operations area over there by their greenhouse. And if you just need a tree and are ready to plant it, go out there and get one.
Yeah, and you know, we found that a seedling just in a brown bag as they come has a short life. Now, if you transfer that seedling to a pot, then you have, even the biggest procrastinator has an opportunity to save and plant that tree. You actually have probably 2 or 3 years that you can wait around for the ideal time to plant it. You know, this is an area where you can plant trees all the time, but it's probably best to plant, in the winter, and early, and I guess from October through about March or April. The hot period of, 95-degree temperatures and low level of, moisture in the soil all wreaks havoc on a newly planted tree. So our advice to people plant trees is wait for a big rain, 1 or 2 inch rain, and then with completely wet, saturated soil, it's easy to dig, and Mother Nature has provided the moisture to get the tree going, so it's off to a good start after a good rain. It's easy to dig. The dirt, you don't have to use a pickaxe to get through the dirt. So that has been a formula for success in planting trees. And we've encouraged other fun things to do. When people are out in the woods squirrel hunting or deer hunting, or they're around their camp, pick up some of the acorns from the live oaks and even water oaks. Get a pocket full of them and go to your squirrel hunting spot or to your deer stand, and don't come back with acorns. It's low cost technology, cheap. You brush with your foot, brush the leaves aside, put 3 acorns down, step on them well, then put the leaves back over them. And you got about a 99% success chance in getting an oak tree to grow, which, a lot of our wetlands areas have lots of trees, many of which provide no food whatever for, the wood ducks and the squirrels and you name the critters, the deer, all the guys that feed on acorns.
Yeah, Bob Thibodeau called me the other day and told me that he's collecting his acorns for this year's Acorn of Hope. And he collects them from some of the best of the oak trees around the cheniers and things like that. And he gives them out by the barrelfuls as well too, that to do the very same thing that you're talking about, and that we can all be tree planters. And it's very important that we plant our native trees. An oak tree, a live oak tree, will host, 280 some odd different species of insects. And, if we don't have these native trees to host the native insects, we don't have the native birds, we don't feed the songbirds. I think we're losing like 3 million birds a year now. And so we need to be sure that we provide the food for them.
How many bugs does it take to feed one nest of chickadees?
Let me tell that. Yeah, the chickadees, and they're only about 5 in a nest, and it takes 8,000 caterpillars to feed this one little nest to get them to fly out, and it's only for about 3 weeks. So they are eating. You'd wonder how we have a butterfly or a moth in anywhere, but obviously we do, and it's very important that we keep planting our native trees. You can plant all the crepe myrtles you want, and they're beautiful, and I have them in my garden. But I'm planting more and more natives as the days go by, because the crepe myrtle, if it's got one insect on it, it's screaming for somebody to pull it off and put it somewhere else, because they just don't provide the food for our native insects.
Originally, I think the goal of Trees Acadiana was to maintain a no net loss of trees. And we lose them to construction, we lose them to road building, we lose them to people who just want to whack them. And then we lose them to hurricanes. Hurricanes can be devastating to our trees. So we need, if we're going to have no net loss, we need an aggressive program of planting new trees. And think about it, one of the answers to the global warming issue is simply to plant trees. And we have a planet that we've taken trees off, and it's time that we worldwide look at putting it back. We don't have to burn the forest down of the Brazilian, Amazon rainforest to plant soybeans. We can, or raise cattle to, make hamburgers with. We can do something a lot better, And once those Brazilian Amazon forests are taken out, they'll never return as that original forest. Kind of like our cypress swamps. We took them in with total disregard for future generations and the beauty of those systems. We took them out.
Yeah, I think there are billions of acres out there that are unforested, that could be forested. And if we were to put in 10 million acres of trees in, we would make a big dent in all of our global warming and all of our carbon problems. And somebody was telling me, Larry Allen was telling me the other day, he said, something even bigger and better than trees is all your prairie plants. And the prairie plants go down 10, 15, 16 feet into the ground, and they tend to bring the carbon into the ground and keep it there for the use of plants.
Yeah, and so our prairies are super important as well as our trees, and it's looked on as Louisiana had beautiful prairies, and we don't have a prairie preserve that I'm aware of. Kansas has set up one, Nebraska has set them up, and it'd be great if Louisiana would think about taking 5 or 6 sections of our native prairies, and in Vermilion or Cameron or Jeff Davis, Acadia, all those were native prairies years and years ago, and to set up a native prairie preserve where you restore the native botanical regime
Are they
that
doing
we
that
pretty
in
much
Eunice?
lost. There's one small, I
Yeah.
think 15 acres
Yeah,
in Eunice. Yeah.
but there are people all around it. They have a huge following with the Prairie Society in this area, and it's coming along. And I think a lot of that, Charles Allen, Malcolm Vadrine, all of these men have been great leaders in our prairies.
And I think one of the big focus of the original trees at Acadiana was to identify historical oaks, to get them registered, and to preserve them. I would say that a lot of the trees we planted were live oaks all through this community, and it's amazing how time flies and how those little bitty old trees we planted now are
Yeah.
big, beautiful trees all over this town.
We have a large planting of those live oak trees on Louisiana Avenue out by the new mall, out by I-10. There was 2 Eagle Scout projects out there, and those trees started off where we could pick them up and carry them to the spot, and now they are nice big shade trees. They're really pretty. And I'm real proud of those. And we planted some over by the new South Side Library. There's a big live oak planting over there. I'm trying to think where else.
Look at the planting on Garfield, just right along the street we're located on right now. That was about, I guess, 50 trees.
Yeah,
They were just,
about 5 years ago.
yeah, just turned out to be beautiful. Have really enhanced an area that didn't look too good along the railroad track, but now it's a beautiful part of the community.
Yeah. We also planted native trees and plants over on Surrey Street by the school board, and that's another real nice planting. It's filled out real well and kind of softens the look of just looking straight into the school bus parking lot.
And tell us about, people often ask about the historical oaks, and I guess some of the most prominent ones are like the Cathedral Oak, which many people come to look at. It's kind of I guess, the tourist spots of Lafayette, along with the Cathedral Church. But the oak trees at UL were planted from acorns. They're planted from seed at the turn of the century, 1900. So this tree is 119 years old. The same time, the New Orleans folks planted the boulevards of St. Charles and I guess another one of the streets, and that had created linear parks with these beautiful live oaks all along and in the neutral ground. So those communities have, enhanced the beauty of their community with projects of that type. It's super important that if you want to improve the economy of a community, you clean it up and beautify it, and trees have to be a part of that beautification.
When it gets so hot and you walk out of the sunlight into the shade of a tree, it just drops all kind of temperature, and it's our trees are wonderful. They shade us. They provide storm water retention. They provide habitat.
They provide protection for homes from the high hurricane winds.
Sure. They're and they're wonderful. You plant them where they lose their leaves at a certain time of the year in the wintertime when it's so cold outside, and you can sit out under the sun. And in the summertime when it's so hot, you're under the shade of the trees, and it makes a very big difference. It makes a difference on your air conditioning and your heating in your homes.
So what are some of the special oaks in Acadiana? I can think of the ones near Perry that nobody knows who's planted, but they're certainly planted by humans because they're in a nice straight line.
Yeah.
Some claim that Jim Bowie planted them, but they probably predate him. He owned the farm south of Perry at one time, and I guess he owned farmland near Opelousas also. But those are very historical oaks, and then we can look at the cathedral oak.
The cathedral oak, and then
The Seven
there's
Sisters,
the friendship oak, which is in Scott, and it's the largest oak that we have found in this area. And now we found another one that just ekes right up there with the friendship oak, and it's called the Blanchette oak, and it is what we just measured, 31 feet in diameter.
Yeah, and the cathedral, I think, is 27.
Yes,
So it's quite a bit
larger.
larger, but it's a tall tree.
Yeah, it's not as pretty as the branches that come out on the cathedral oak. I can remember when I had my Cub Scout den and I would pick up all the boys at cathedral, we'd all go out while we were waiting for their moms. We'd all go out and hold hands together around that tree and see if we could reach around it. And we never could reach around it, but I even had boys that would climb up on its branches, and that's no longer happening because it's fenced off and planted with ferns underneath it. I think one of your Boy Scout troops did that.
Sure did.
One of your Eagle projects
That was-
planted all the ferns underneath it.
There was so much foot track on it that it had pounded the ground underneath to a concrete consistency where water and nutrients wouldn't get to the roots. And so that had to be somewhat loosened up and tilled, and had to stop people from walking on it. Would completely cover the bottom with ferns. And then I think the cathedral realized how the tree was such an asset that now they've fenced it off, and they have a nice plaque that talks about the tree, how old it is, and I think the claim is the tree was a young tree when Columbus discovered America, so it's been there 500 plus years.
It's a beautiful tree, beautiful. What an asset to our community, and what an asset are all of our live oaks. And we've got some major, beautiful magnolias. There's a beautiful magnolia over in the priest housing over at home over next to the cathedral. I mean, it almost looks like the cathedral oak. It is so big. It's beautiful.
And what's near Washington, you have the group of oaks, was it Seven Sisters?
No. It's the Five Brothers, I believe, and they were getting ready to go off to war or so, and their dad planted these trees for them. I think. I'm not real sure about the story on that, but they are all of these trees, and they're just kind of gnarled and twisted all together. They're beautiful.
And they're easy to see from the road, just on the old road going into Washington, I guess just south of town. I think, yeah, just south of town.
Yeah. And then we've got 10 trees that are listed as our largest trees, and we are revisiting those trees now. Well, we'll start revisiting them again after Arbor Day, but we're revisiting, remeasuring, resending any new differences we get in their size to the Live Oak Society, and to update the information on them. And we hope to start setting up some kind of a GPS finding that you could get in your car and drive around and see where these trees are. A lot of them are on private land, and so that's got to be respected, but you can see most of them from the streets, and they're beautiful. we even thought that we would maybe do some bike riding within the maybe downtown extended area to just some pretty significant trees and just spend a nice time doing that.
Okay, tell us about the path going forward and share with us when does Trees Acadiana meet, where, and how does someone join and become involved?
Well, we meet every fourth Tuesday at the Historic Map House at 1020 Auburn Avenue, and we meet at 5:30, and you are certainly welcome to come and join us. We need help. We need an increase of volunteers, and so that would be very important if you'd like to get involved in a special way with Trees Acadiana. We are in the process right now of getting ready for our Arbor Day planting, and that's going to be real exciting. We have joined with a group called Conservation Partners. There's about 11 of us together to join to plant trees. We've got a grant from HDR, and HDR is it's an engineering firm, but it's an employee-owned engineering and architectural consulting firm. And HDR Foundation was formed by HDR, and it is totally employee-owned and operated and funded, rather. And so that's really exciting to know that there's a place here, an engineering group here that cares so much about all of the environmental issues. And so the Bayou Vermilion Preservation Association applied for one of their grants through Amber Robinson, who is a member of the Bayou Vermilion District or Bayou Vermilion Preservation Association, as well as an employee for HDR. And we got that grant, and we are really excited about that. We are doing 5 bank line stabilization plantings, and we are doing 3 urban plantings here in the Lafayette area. It's called Reviving, it's RRL, Reviving Resilient Landscapes. And we've already completed our first one on November the 16th. It was at Acadiana Nature Station. They'd gone in to repair a bridge, and they just took a trough of the native trees and things down to be able to get their equipment in to rebuild this bridge. And so our first RRL project was on Saturday the 16th. We went in with about 15 to 20 people. We planted trees, we planted native plants, we planted grasses, and left a real nice project that hopefully will just fill out, bloom out, and stop the erosion into the little coulee there.
Okay, tell us about the Arbor Day coming up.
Well, before I tell you about that, I want to tell you about something coming before Arbor Day. On December the 7th, we are planting over in the Freetown area, on the corner of Garfield and Lamar. Now, about 5 years ago, we planted the Garfield lineal parkway there, and it goes all along the railroad tracks from Vermilion Street all the way to down to Taft almost. And so anyway, we will be remulching all of those trees. There are about 38 trees there. And then we are planting in a new area across from Gary's, if you know where Gary's is. We'll be planting
On Garfield.
Yeah, it's on Garfield and Lamar, and we will be planting the Freetown Heritage Park there. It'll be an area that you can go and sit in the shade and just enjoy maybe a hamburger from Gary's. Or maybe bring down something from the Superette, the Acadian Superette, and just sit there and enjoy the pleasure of the trees. We're planting, let's see, 11 trees around that park area, and then on down the walkway, we'll be planting 9 more trees. They will already be augered, and the holes will be dug because it's some real tough. Like limestone had been in the one area, which has been dug out, but we don't know what's down beneath the digging area. And then we've got a lot of electrical stuff that we need to be careful of. So we will be planning that December the 7th. If you want to come out and help place trees, we'll be receiving those on the 6th of December. Now, then that brings us to our January 10th. January 10th, we have 150 trees from an Apache Corporation grant that Trees Acadiana received. And we will be offloading about 94 of them at the Bayou Vermilion District Operations area by the greenhouse over there. And then the other 57 or so of them will come with us to Acadiana Park on Alexandria, 1005 Alexandria Street. And that's where we're going to do our Arbor Day planting. And we will offload these trees there on January the 10th. We will bring them to the areas. There's a new, about a mile walking and jogging path around the park. And we will be putting these trees out where we've located to them to be planted. So on the 18th, it'll just be time. You just come out there. The tree will be located where you're going to plant it. You dig a hole and put it in it and mulch it. We're really excited about this planting. It's going to be beautiful. When we were out walking around the jogging path, everybody that was jogging around it said, "Oh, you're going to be planting trees? That is so great. It's going to be so nice and shaded." And so we're excited about doing that, and so are the people with the Park and Recreations Department. We also, that day, if you got enough strength and stamina left, we're going to walk around the corner to the Acadiana Nature Station and pull invasive privet out of their walk areas. They've gotten a bunch of it pulled. Now there's a whole other section, and so we'd love for you to join us in doing that as well too.
You don't want to disturb the poison ivy when
No,
you do that.
it's all going to be dead and down for now. The only thing up living will be the privet, so you're not going to be wondering what to pull. So January the 10th, come out and help us unload all of these trees, and January the 18th, come help us plant around 57 trees at Acadiana Park.
And you might share with us the program with the schools, how that works?
Yeah, we also are sending a letter out to through the school board to all of the area schools, and that Trees Acadiana provides one large tree for their campus that they can plant anywhere they want. And any child wanting to take a tree seedling, their bare root seedlings, we'll have 550 of those coming in. Any child that wants to take one home to plant, they're given to them free. And all of these trees are given free thanks to Apache Corporation.
Yeah, that's super important that we receive support to get all these trees planting. And you know, we look back over the 23 or 24 years, we've averaged potting about 500 or 600 seedlings a year to be given out, and they're at Festival International, at Festival Acadiana, and other events where we have the opportunity to give out. And like Festival Acadiana, we gave out, I think, 87 trees. And so in a year's time between the schools and so forth, each year we probably have given out close to 600 to 1,000 trees. So you look back 23 or 24 years and talk about 12,000 trees that got planted. Of course, we feel that makes a big difference in the beauty of this community, in the air quality, and the habitat and food that these trees provide for wildlife, the birds, the squirrels, and all the critters that benefit enormously, and all the other benefits, conservation of water, conservation of soil, especially when trees are planted along the waterways. Do you build a bulkhead at $1,000 a foot, or do you plant trees for next to nothing that'll be here like the cypress trees along the waterway? They form a root system that far surpasses what a bulkhead could do, both in beauty and in ensuring that the riparian zone along the waterway is preserved, which is where most of the life along the stream is, in that first 15, 20 feet along the edge.
We're learning that bulkheads will cause water to come and beat into them and rush across to the other side banks and dig away at that other bank and undercut it. And so, bulkhead is not the solution, but planting trees that will hold down grasses, irises, all of these water type of plants. It's very important that you get involved in this. And so at each one of these plantings that we will be doing, there will be an educational time there that we will be talking to you about the trees that are valuable to you and the ones, how to plant, where to plant them, those that like shade, those that like to be out in the broiling hot sun. Same with the plants. We're giving away plants, and that's thanks to this HDR grant that we have. They're providing a lot of the plants, they're providing the giveaways, they're providing the trees for the Freetown planting, because the city calls for large trees, and so we will be getting those.
Which is a much larger expense.
Yeah, it's a much larger expense. And so we are, we're thankful to have this grant from HDR.
Yeah, and it's, we have to thank all the nurseries too in a lot of these plantings, especially Boy Scouts. That's nearly all donated. These are generally larger trees that is donated by local nurseries. And to their credit, some of these nurseries do a wonderful job in selecting the trees that do well in our soils and climate, especially the native trees like the live oaks and of course the red oaks and a lot of other trees that are native that are beautiful. And but we have to thank, for instance, I think 3 nurseries gave us 78 trees for the Cade Civic Center in St. Martin Parish. And, that was amazing. That project was planted, 78 trees were planted, and about 25 of them were in 30-gallon pots, so these enormous holes. And that was planted in about 2 hours, planted and mulched in about 2 hours. So it's just amazing. Lots of hands make a job much smaller, and you get volunteers that really push along and make this happen. So.
One of the things that we're doing for the Arbor Day planning at Acadiana Park is that we're setting it up as memorializing a loved one or a friend by planting a tree in their honor. You can make a memorial or an honorarium donation of $100 to Trees Acadiana. We'll take your picture out there planting the tree and have a certificate for you as well. So if you so want to help support Trees Acadiana and have a tree memorialized to somebody, please get in touch with us. I think my email is up on the the screen right now. So give us a call back. Be sure and put Trees Acadiana in your subject title, so I'll be able to find you.
Want to mention too the successes we've been having. I guess a lot of that help has come from UL in guiding us and helping us, especially with oak trees. We've had a battle to save an oak tree in Youngsville. Trees Acadiana was in the middle of that, and thanks to generous backers and volunteers, we could come up with the funds
To make that happen.
to make
yeah.
that happen. And you might share the success of saving Miss Al.
Yeah, Mr. Al was, with the Youngsville oak, they were going to have to cut this tree down for a temporary road to build their roundabout there. And we kept asking, can we move it? Can we move the tree? And so there was, oh, sure, you can. And then, oh, no, we've got it settled. Oh, yes, you can. Oh, no, we've got it settled. And so somewhere along that line, we brought in a group out of Houston, the tree movers, and they move trees all over the world. And they move trees in Texas. They're all out of Texas. And so anyway, we got in touch with them, and they flew down in their private jets and came to one of the Youngsville council meetings. But in the process, Youngsville got it settled, and we put the road somewhere else. But the Department of Transportation called and said, while you have these men down here, do you think they could come look at the Mr. Al? And Mr. Al is located kind of east on Highway 90 from New Iberia. And so they went down there and said, oh, that'll be a piece of cake. We just have to bring it a mile down to the Weeks Island overpass there at over Highway 90. And so they dug that tree. There's pictures of it on the screen right now. They dug that tree and they put rollers under it. They got it up on a gantry and dropped the wires. Dropped the wires on Highway 90. All the traffic was held back. It was so cool. And up it went, and we marched down Highway 90 with this magnificent tree. And I hope that you will take the special time to even get there and to drive out there and see this tree. It sits majestically at the Weeks Island Road overpass to the north of Highway 90. And it's just gorgeous. It is gorgeous.
And it's 5 years, and they set up the well to keep it watered, and they had a 5-year management plan to keep it, make sure that it survived well, and it's just prospered and done well. It was amongst other trees where it was. Now it's the Lone Ranger. It's just majestic, and it's just filled out just beautifully.
Saying thank you. It is gorgeous. And, I think when we have these trees that have to be moved, that we need to try and do something like this, because it's gorgeous.
Not to mention George Rodriguez, who was very much a part of this and helped to get this all funded to save the Youngsville oak. He did a painting which he donated the proceeds to the Trees Acadiana.
In fact, we still have about 7 of those prints. If anybody would like to think about buying a Rodriguez print of the Youngsville oak, get in touch.
So that was really a success story, and Bill Fontenot, who was the area engineer for Louisiana Department of Transportation Development, realized the importance of saving that tree, and of course the highway department knew they had to save the tree, and it was, you might share what that story is about, why they saved it.
Yeah, well, there was, there were protesters about cutting the Mr. Owl tree down, and so what they needed there was to have a service road, and so they brought the service road up to one side of the tree of the Mr. Owl, and the other service road to the other side of it, and stopped it and said, "All right, all of you who want to save the tree, you just drive the distance around to get from these service roads." And so all of a sudden, Bill Fontenot, who was then the head of the Department of Transportation, said, he called me, he said, "Can you bring those tree movers down?" He said, "Because we've got to move this tree." I asked the federal highway people, I said, "All right, so is it true that you've saved the Mr. Owl because these large trees help with storm drainage and all of the storm water?" And that girl looked at me and she said, "No, indeed not. I tell you what saved this Mr. Owl is people. The people that wanted this tree saved it." And they said, "We told them that you can either move Highway 90 south, or you can move all of these houses out of here and pay for them. And you will finish this service road, but you will not cut down the Mr. Owl." So public sentiment plays a big role in things like this.
Yeah, and that happened at Pecan Island, the highway department. It was ready to cut down about 50 oaks. They were close to the road along the Greenwich near Pecan Island Road, and public sentiment. I think Bob Thibodeau was very involved in just raising the dickens from the governor on down, said, "Hey, you can't cut these historical trees, because you can have a hard time replacing them. You can't replace 300-year-old trees."
Right.
Yeah. And so public sentiment plays a big role in the public decisions affecting our beautiful trees. We don't have mountains and all, but we have beautiful cypress and live oaks all over South Louisiana.
And we need to value the importance of them. They've been here longer than any of us have been here. They will be here a lot longer than any of us. And why the largest things here around us? Why would we destroy these oak trees?
And they can survive, hurricanes and storms and big freezes and just all kinds of tornadoes, you name it, they survive all that, but they can't survive an idiot with a chainsaw.
I'm concerned about the live oaks on Pinhook. If you ride by them, you will see that their roots are all just being broken up and exposed, and I don't know what the answer to that is. We need to get with somebody that does know the answer. I don't know whether we can go in there and remulch them. I don't think they're roots that are growing anymore, but I guess the roots that are growing off of them. But it's, I don't know about what they've cut down one of those oak trees over there, and another one looks really bad. So I don't know. Maybe some of y'all can come help us decide what to do and get out there and let's do it. If they say they need mulching, can you come help?
Yeah, and we really need to commend all the volunteers who've helped, with all the plantings in the past 20 years plus. We enjoy the benefits of that. We ran into probably one of the scouts wanting to plant oak trees along several of the streets, and we could never get permission from the city to do that. So being careful about where the utilities are and using a metal detector to make sure we're clear. We went ahead and planted on some of these neutral grounds along Pinhook, and it was about a month later, and the city folks were mulching them and trimming them and taking care of them, and You know, and I asked, I said, well, who planted these trees? And they quickly said, oh, we think the park people planted them, but we're going to take good care of them. So the left hand often in public, you know, communities and cities don't know what the right hand is doing. And so those trees are big, beautiful trees now.
They are.
And I think it was in Houston that trees that were planted by scouts were ripped out by some hamburger operation. And the city forced them to replace all those trees full size and fine them $2 million. These were not just any trees. They were trees planted by, you know, scouts and volunteers in the community. It kind of makes them super special, of great value. You know.
And so we are looking for lots of you volunteers come January the 10th and January the 18th. And if you can come out and help us plant in Freetown on December the 7th, we would love to see you then too. You know, sharpen your shovel, get your gloves out, and bring your own water bottles. We'll have the water to refill. There's not going to be any plastic bottles, water bottles. We'll have refillable things. So bring your show them your aluminum cup there, Harold.
Yeah, we have to share that. I'm at Scout Camp. We have 450 scouts and volunteer leaders at Scout Camp. Now, they feed us 3 meals a day for 5 days. So you do the math, and you know you're talking about 1,400 cups you're not using. You're using these aluminum Mountain Boy Scout cups, and if you don't have a cup, you don't have your cup, you don't drink. And so I commend the scouting program for using reusable cups rather than styrofoam cups to fill our landfill and end up on our beaches and all in the wrong places. And so I think that's a great example to our young people to, something we ought to be doing at home. Use as little as we can of the plastics and the single-use containers.
Right. You know, Trees Acadiana, along with some other people, help sponsor a film, a documentary, a couple of weeks ago at the Light Center, and it was called The Symphony of the Soil. And it was just a gorgeous documentary. I saw it originally at Vermilionville, and from the time I saw it a year ago, I've been working at trying to get a place to show it here. And it was just gorgeous. Wait, we got a call coming in?
Yep. You on air? Can we help you?
Yes, is this Mr. Schoeffler?
You got him.
Well, good evening, Mr. and Mrs. Schoeffler. This is Jeff Lemon calling. I had a little question. I note this year that we seem to be experiencing more colorful fall foliage, and that kind of piqued my interest there. Is that because we had the hard freeze about 2 weeks ago, got down to about 25 degrees?
Yes,
I would
indeed.
think that's what did it, right. Yeah, exactly. I've been noticing just the colors. I'm in the woods up near Chico in Evangeline Parish, and those woods are just gorgeous. Those oak trees have turned orange and red. They're just beautiful.
Yeah, and Jeff,
We normally don't see that down
no,
here.
you
No.
don't. Last year we had a cold snap early on, and we had a lot of color then too. And I was noticing that too, and I thought, I ought to write something up and say, you don't have to go to Vermont this year to see the color in the leaves. Leaves will are affected by the length of the day and the night, and so they will start dying off, and the deciduous trees their leaves will start dropping off. And if we get a cold spell before that time limit in there, that's when you get the color in the leaves. And so this year we've really gotten them.
The red oaks are especially beautiful.
gosh.
The white oaks is especially beautiful right now. And
Noticing a lot of reds and yellows.
Yes.
I thought I was crazy, but I appreciate that information.
great.
Okay.
Thank you so much for the call. Thank you, sir.
Okay,
Yes.
good evening.
Yeah, it's a beautiful time of the
It
year.
is. It's
Really pretty.
been really pretty this year. The cypress are gorgeous. You know, they've
They're
got the
turning their
really
gold right
golden,
now,
the
yeah.
golden color. They're really pretty.
And there's a spot at Lake Falls Point that's just gorgeous. You know, when the cypress turn right now, and the gold is against the Spanish moss, and it's just something out of a picture. But one of the most beautiful spots on earth, I think, is that Lake Falls Point system, Lake Doe tree with these 2,000-year-old oak trees, pine trees, excuse me, 2,000-year-old cypress trees. It's just a real pretty time of the year for that. It's real gorgeous when they first turn green, and right now when they're turning gold.
And some of them have a real reddish look to them as well too. And I can remember we took a photographer out into Lake Falls Point, and how beautiful the trees were then. I mean, they were just red, just brilliant red all over. They're gorgeous.
Those trees, we aged 10 of them, and I don't know if we had the 10 oldest, but 5 of them were over 1,500 years old. And so I'm sure some of those trees were around, you know, at the time when, the same time Jesus walked on the face of the earth, those trees were living. And you think about the Indians paddled under them like we do, you know, thousands of years ago, and for thousands of years. It's interesting to look at the artifacts, or the lack of the artifacts on the Indian middens in the Lake Falls Point system. They are pre-pottery. There are some mounds that have pottery, but there's several that have no pottery. And I was investigated by an archaeological team, which means those mounds are over 4,000 years old. And fortunately, they're still intact. And a lot of the mounds inside the levee system have been covered up and totally lost. So it's been so important that those sites are recognized as archaeological sites and preserved in their natural state.
Yeah. That's been one of the biggest problems with the shell dredging that we had, was the removal of all of the historic Indian.
Yeah, the mouth of Vermilion Bayou, there were the pyramid mounds, and there were 3 mounds, and the largest was in the middle, and it was about 30 feet above sea level, I would guess, and the 2 side mounds were maybe 5 or 6 feet lower. But the big mound was flat as a pancake for about an acre at the top, no vegetation whatever, and they were dredged up to put on parking lots. You know, what would they be worth if they were still there today? The big mounds on White Lake were removed, including the alligator mound. The mounds, there was a big square mound on the northeast corner of White Lake that was removed in 1931, 1932 to build the road from Intracoastal City to Perry and from Esther to Forked Island. And it's interesting that there were so many artifacts on the roads. There was a Mr. Gooch in Abbeville that would give the kids 25 cents a 5-gallon bucket for the artifacts. And he had all kinds of stuff. And that was stolen from Mr. Gooch's family. And when they thought they were going to get caught, they dumped it all into the bayou.
Wow. All right, I think we're coming to a close, and I'd like to remind you that we need your help. We appreciate your help making Lafayette and all of Acadiana area treed. It's January the 10th. Help us unload, be it the Bayou Vermilion District, to help us unload trees, and help us unload at Acadiana Park. And then on the 18th of January, we will plant those trees. And this December the 7th, we'll plant the trees on Garfield by Lamar and Garfield area. So come out, plant trees, be a part of the solution of just beautifying the area as well as helping with cleaning the air. Sucking
Habitat
up
for
the water.
Wildlife, the whole
Right.
thing, the benefits it
Right.
brings. So, thank you, Sarah, for,
Okay. We got 1 minute.
right. Again, our meetings are?
On the fourth Tuesday at 5:30 at the Historic Map House, 1020 Auburn Avenue,
Great.
right off of Pinhook.
Wait, we still have a few moments left.
Okay.
Join us in the tree planting. It's something worthwhile, very meaningful to our community. It's a great example for our youngsters to take part in. You know,
Yes.
somebody plants a tree and 20 years later, they can say, I was a scout and I planted that tree.
So bring your children out. Give them a shovel. Show them how. That's very important. We appreciate your help.